Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot of the week's biggest business stories, their context, their relevance and policy impact. I'm Govindraj, Ethiraj. India's fourth quarter GDP numbers are down sharply at 6.1% against 9% a year ago. For the full year 2016-17, India's GDP growth was 7.1%, also a three-year low. Now, demonetization is seen as the key reason for the slowdown in the quarter from December to March 31st, 2017. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has, however, said that the annual rate of growth was very reasonable and that the new goods and service tax would add to the rate of growth. The larger question we're asking is, to what extent is this growth an aberration, and to what extent do the components of growth tell us in terms of our understanding of the Indian economy? And finally, what is the outlook for this year and what are the policy responses that are called for? To discuss this, I'm joined by DK Joshi, Chief Economist at CRISIL, Upasana Bharadwaj, Senior Economist at Kotak Bank, and Abhishek Rastogi of Ketan and Company. Thank you all for joining me. Let me begin with you, DK. So when you look at these numbers, I guess the first question everyone is asking is, will this continue into the current quarter as well?
Well, I think it might spill over in some of the sectors like real estate, gems and jewelry, etc., which I think where the hit has been a little more than others. The other segments, I think, as the economy got remonetized, I think they're already bouncing back, and they'll bounce back. See, the larger issue is that now I think this data that was released on 31st, it confirms now that the demonetization did slow down the economy, because in the first half of the year the economy was slowing, but in the second half it was expected to bounce back because your agriculture was supposed to be good and government spending because of pay commission. I think it did happen. I mean, government spending did go up, agriculture did improve. Despite that, the economy slowed down. So clearly, the other parts of the economy took a hit from demonetization, particularly the construction sector and also the financial services sector. Now, our assessment is that the economy will rebound from this in 2017-18, and it will slowly glide up. I mean, the first quarter will still see some scars. I mean, as I said, in real estate and in some segments like gems and jewelry, and informal sector, which we really don't know much about. I mean, that is only anecdotal evidence that we have. But beyond that, I think the economy should start looking up. I mean, in 2017-18 fiscal.
Right. Upasana, what's your sense? If you were to look at the components, what's pulling things up and what's dragging things down?
Yeah, clearly, Govind, I think if we look at the construction and the real estate segment, these are the two biggest drags on the last quarter GDP that we saw. And along with that, of course, the financial sector. But given that the higher weightages for real estate, we saw, and that was kind of expected, right? Post demonetization, we knew that these are the sectors which are going to be most hit. So if we exclude the agriculture and the government spending, the so-called private component of GVA, then that clearly suggests a sharp slowdown, and mostly led by manufacturing, construction, and real estate. So these were the key sectors. Having said that, I think as we go forward, like Dr. Joshi said, I would tend to agree that there are few segments, few pockets which will continue to see the spillovers of demonetization effect, and we will see that continue to be a drag. But there are certain other segments which will probably help us hold up the growth to a slightly upward trajectory. So on the upside, I think there is expected to be rural demand. Hopefully, if the monsoons turn out to be good, we do expect rural demand to hold up. At the same time, if states were to implement the pay hikes, then that could at least provide some kind of pent-up demand again. So it would again continue to be a consumption-driven story, but the drags, you can say, would be lower government spending, because last year it was a surge in government spending which kind of supported growth. But this year, overall center plus state included, the growth is almost half of what it was last year. So, we do not expect that kind of a push to come from the center and state. Yes, if agriculture was good, that will probably continue to be a driver for growth. Private investment continues to remain very weak, so we do not expect incremental growth coming there. So some kind of a gradual recovery happening, because rural wages are kind of firming up, but urban wages are kind of stagnant. So consumption has offsetters as well on one side, and some kind of supporting factors. So I would tend to believe that it will still remain firm in terms of consumption, but investment will be a lag again.
Okay, Abhishek, so the finance minister has clearly said that, the rollout of GST expected to start on July 1st will bring back GDP growth. What's your sense if you look at the way taxes have moved in the last year or so?
See, I think there are a couple of points here. One is, of course, when we have to look the fourth quarter, we have to, of course, see the manufacturing, which has gone down in the fourth quarter. Construction has gone down tremendously. And of course, while agriculture has gone down in the fourth quarter, overall, for the entire year, it has gone up.
Yes.
Now this has to be looked in consensus with what has happened to the tax collection. And if we see the tax collections for central excise has gone up by 33%. For services, it has gone up by about 20%. Now, if the growth rate is in the range of 7%, but the taxes have gone up by about 20% overall, which means that the tax to GDP ratio is much better in this year as compared to the last year. I think which is a good sign. And now a lot of people have been talking whether demonetization is a factor to it. I feel demonetization to a very large extent is not the only factor. It may have contributed to a bit of it because of the cash crunch which has happened in some of the unorganized sector. But I think what has really happened is that people are anticipating this GST to now come on the 1st of July. And if you see the real manufacturing sector, the stock in hand of most of the manufacturers have gone down because they feel there are a lot of tax cascading, especially the interstate procurement, and that's why they want to reduce that raw material with them. Similarly, the amount of sales which are happening or the stocks which are being there in godowns, etc., or the showrooms, etc., has come down. So because of that, the manufacturing facility, has come down to a bit, and that may have an impact.
Okay, DK, are you seeing any correlation between these factors or the lack of it? High rise in tax collections versus, let's say, the lower GDP number versus the point that he just made, Abhishek just made about how companies might be, destocking to prepare for GST?
Yeah, I think I've heard of destocking happening, I think, which is a natural reaction. But as far as the taxes are concerned, I think some of the increase in taxes is also because of, I think, government-induced new schemes. And I agree that partly demonetization would have contributed. The larger issue is that whether the tax to GDP ratio, which today is still lower than what it was in 2007-8, I think will it bounce back on a durable basis? And that is where I think the relevance of GST comes in. It might not happen this year, but over a 2 to 3 year time frame, GST, we had estimated it that it will push up the tax collections at the center and at the state level, and will make a material difference to tax to GDP ratio. And I think on top of that, the demonetization led impetus to the cashless economy. I think if this gains momentum, as of now, I think it hasn't done much. But if it really gains momentum, then better cash trails will also help the government in together with the demonetization will help the government to formalize the economy a bit and also improve the tax collections. But that is all work in progress. I don't see this happening in the year 2017-18 because I think we will see some disruption this year with the implementation of GST. But going ahead, I think so. This is a story that will play out over the medium run. Not in
okay. Let me get 2 quick points in from both of you. Upasana, first you. So at 6.5%, obviously this is a cause for concern at a larger level. Should there be a policy response? Should there be monetary policy, fiscal policy? What's your reaction?
No, at the moment, I think I don't expect really policymakers to react to these numbers. Yes, definitely from the monetary policy side, they have been hugely surprised on the downside with the inflation trajectory that RBI has been expecting. So that's where we are expecting a softer tone. They had turned extremely hawkish in the previous policy, and that's where we expect a correction. But we do not really expect an immediate reaction in terms of a rate cut or something responding to these kind of GDP numbers, because clearly post demonetization we would need to wait and see exactly how the economy bounces back or not. So we should rather be on a wait and watch mode before we can really react. So we should not react immediately. But yes, a dovish tone is
DK,
what
can I get your view in here? Are you at the relatively lower rate of growth? I was also noticing that the Reuters poll of economists had predicted the fourth quarter at 7.1%. So there's a huge gap between what was actually expected and what came through. So what's your, do we need to react? Do we need a monetary policy or a fiscal policy reaction?
Well, I think the policymakers will wait for some more time, I guess. And as far as the monetary policy is concerned, I think one thing is sure, that the interest rates are not going to rise. I think there was a fear that looking at the language of the central bank, it was looking like that they could actually, if inflation spurts, they could raise interest rates at some point. I think that is clearly ruled out. As far as cutting the rates is concerned, they are technically in the neutral zone, which means that the interest rate can swing either way. They can be reduced, they can be raised, they can be held where they are. But I don't think the central bank is going to cut rates on June 7. They'll hold it steady.
So last word, Abhishek. So if as GST rolls in, first of all, a quick update on, do you see things moving as smoothly as we thought, or how much of dislocation do you expect, and what could be the economic impact in the near term?
See, I think definitely 1st July looks very realistic now. As far as the economic fundamentals are concerned, I think the next quarter, which means the quarter beginning from 1st of July, will see a lot of growth, and definitely both from the consumer perspective and from the manufacturing perspective, because the consumer sentiments today are to hold on the purchases, which I think will go in the quarter beginning July. So that would be a big boost to the economy, for sure. And I think when we are commenting on all these, we should not ignore the global economic scenario as of now. And even if we see the growth of China in the 4th quarter, I think it is relatively low as compared to the earlier quarters. So I think keeping all that in mind, I'm sure that the quarter beginning July 1 will be very, very optimistic.
Right. So DK, can I just get you in for one last quick word there? So I haven't put the global question. So is that likely to play a negative, positive impact in your mind?
Well, I think there is little doubt that the global economic policy uncertainty is very high today, but that has not as yet translated into any negative implication on the economy, because world economy is still, is still growing, but there's too many moving parts. So I think one has to be very cautious in assessing how that will play out into the domestic economy. I think if things like protectionism, etc., they gain currency and we see some material action, then obviously I think there is a clear hit to us as well. But as of now, I think we haven't seen any of that happen. So the economic policy uncertainty index computed by Stanford University, I think that shows it has been rising very, very sharply. But at the same time, the world economy also seems to be bouncing back.
Right, DK. Thank you so much for that. We've run out of time completely. We need to go in for a break. Coming up on the other side, the government has said that it is open to disinvesting, privatizing Air India. How could that happen? Stay with us.
The story we thought we knew. The story of magnificence. The story of bloody battles. Of those who ruled and those who left their footprints. The story charting the course of our past. Talking History on Rajya Sabha TV.
Hello and welcome back to Policy Watch. The government has said it is exploring all options to disinvest or privatize state-owned airline Air India. The airline has run up a debt of 50,000 crore rupees and has losses of roughly the same amount. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has said that if 86% of flying can be handled by the private sector, they can handle 100% as well. So your money does not go into running private airlines. Why should it go into Air India, Mr. Jaitley said. So the larger question we're asking is, what is the way forward for disinvesting or privatizing Air India now that the issue is back on the table? What will be the ideal situation for all stakeholders, including the government itself and the brand that is Air India? To discuss this, I'm joined by former Air India Executive Director Jitendra Bhargav and also joined by Captain A.D. Manek, pilot instructor. Thank you so much for joining me. So, Mr. Bhargav, let me begin with you. So, we seem to be starting at a point of, rather than discussing whether, we're more talking about if and when.
You see, let's go back into history. It's very vital, essential to go. 1988, government recognized that there was a need to disinvest. So Air India became the first company to be referred to the Disinvestment Commission of India. Since then, 29 years, Air India has only gone down. Question still remains, can Air India survive in a competitive environment with the kind of work practices it has, the kind of cost parameters it works on, and the day-to-day interference of the government? It cannot.
Right.
So there has to be a way out. The question is, what is the way out? Now, can you win over everyone and said, all right, this is how it will be done? A government is very unlikely to cede control. They will not cede control till they have no airline to hold on to. That's the kind of tragic.
Right, but some would argue we've already reached that point.
Not
financially.
You still have 14% and there's hope. Let me explain to you. Japan Airlines, Qantas of Air India's vintage had only recently turned around. How did they do it? They got a good leader. They contracted, consolidated, and achieved the turnaround. In Air India, we've been talking for the last 25 years about turnaround.
Right. So let's fast forward then. I'm saying, since we've already been through this discussion on whether it can be done by government ownership like other countries, we need to know. Okay, let me get Captain Manik here. At this point, how should we be going forward? If we are saying privatizing or disinvesting?
I favor, privatization. The fact remains open to the government and the public and everybody throughout the world. We need focused kind of administration of any airline, and we found we need to be to go further, to go to privatize and do the best to run the airline, because it's a pride of country. In Air India, the name Air India itself, it gives a flag carrier, and it got a very good history. Started in 1932.
Right.
And G.R.D. Tata was first pilot, and he was the key person to open the airline as a Tata airline. And today is going through a very bad phase.
Right.
It's very bad for us.
Right. So, Mr. Bhargav, so assuming that we're privatizing, so there are already discussions on how the assets should be separated, what should be held on, what is the equity that is within the airline, what can be capitalized or monetized upon. What's yours?
You see, considering the fact that people have an emotional connect with Air India, it is not any company, it has been an institution, let's put it this way. The government must tread carefully. I strongly oppose the kind of statement made by the finance minister that 86% they can fly by private carriers, why not 100%? Which means, what option are you giving? First is create an environment. You will have to win the political constituency, you'll have to win over the employees to look at. So my rationale has been...
But why would you do that? I mean, do we have time for that? I mean, it's already a loss-making
proposition. Even
now,
Niti Ayog's recommendation have been sent to the Ministry of Civil Aviation. They will take their time before it goes to the cabinet for this thing.
Sure.
I'm saying, why make a statement?
Let's keep the process
Why
aside.
make a statement ahead of the kind of thing?
Okay.
Put the whole thing. You see, you got to create acceptability environment in public and said, yes, it needs it. The public says yes. The key stakeholders, employees, and the political opponents.
But I think what the finance minister is trying to point out, that this has become an insignificant player in the overall scheme of things. Whatever the public, whatever the employees may think, whatever the...
No, that's in the context of the mounting losses and the huge
even
debt.
market share, right? 14% market share, is neither...
The question is, how is it? Naturally, when you induct aircraft, or private airlines induct aircraft at a faster pace than Air India does, the market share will go down.
Yeah.
I'm only saying, the question to be asked, and I'm for privatization, let me say that. Can Air India survive in its current avatar? The answer is no. Can the government keep giving funds to Air India? The answer is no. So what is left? You got to find a viable alternative. Employees are still under a kind of a feeling that they are not responsible for the pathetic state of Air India, but the government is.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is to put it across to them that, look, this is the entire way you have been functioning. These are the kind of functions that you perform by virtue of being a public sector company. Now, anything that you do as part of that government policy, we will compensate.
Okay, well, let me get the employee and let me get a view. Captain Manik, what's your sense? Since employees are an important constituency and who have served the airline, it's no fault of theirs as such that maybe the airline is doing badly today. How would you address?
See, overall, all employees and everybody have to work in such an environment which should go on a progress level, which is not there. So it's understood from the situations where we are standing at the moment that everybody have to think over it and make this Air India to fly fruitfully and profitably in this country. So
So what should employees be doing? What is the stance they should be taking in your mind?
they should they should produce the work culture. We should have a kind of productivity. And why we are losing? Why we are at loss? There is something wrong with the management. Something wrong with the productivity. Something wrong with the focusing of the employees. So I suggest, we being Indian, being pride of India, Air India, we need to make it to survive and fly properly by working with having proper
right. So it's a matter of survival, you're saying, and survival for the better. So Mr. Bhargav, so if Air India has to survive, everyone, including employees, government, everyone has to agree to a new way of doing things, which will only come through change in ownership.
You see, employees come first, let people this, being stakeholders. Now, what have they done since the existential crisis took place when they were not getting their salaries on time? Did it spur them to perform better? The answer is no. You set up an engineering establishment and engineers refused to go there. You couldn't operationalize it and earn revenue by undertaking repairs of third-party aircraft.
And why did that happen? So we have no one from Air India to respond to this, but yeah.
Perhaps concluded that being a PSU, government will be obliged to keep infusing funds indefinitely.
Okay.
Now that thought has to be perished, number one. Number two, the work culture is of the monopoly era. It has to change. Now, who can change it?
Right.
Not a chairman or a leader in the organization who is known for compromises, who is under pressure either of the political leadership or the bureaucracy. There has to be a leader who's accountable. My job is to ensure that Air India progresses.
Right. So if who will come as we disinvest and privatize? So what are the 2 or 3 things that we should now look at in the equation as we move towards privatization? In terms of the question that I asked first: what are the assets at hand? What is the goodwill? How do you capitalize and monetize on that for
Air India
future?
has enormous assets and goodwill. It only needs to be given a direction. Engineering, as I said earlier, we have a large engineering setup. Ground handling business, Air India monopolizes. Now, plus you have trained
Is it a monopoly because it's a monopoly, or is it?
No. There's competition at various airports. You're still handling more aircraft, more airlines than anybody in association with a subsidiary company. Now, question comes
even in Mumbai and Delhi.
Yeah. No, several airports. They're doing it.
What I meant is even in Mumbai and Delhi, where there is, let's say, a private airport.
In Mumbai, it's being handled on their own.
Yeah.
Another place, they've got AI SATs of Singapore, a joint venture which is handling. Now, there is no
So
reason.
these are the strengths, and
These are the strength, pilot training, you've got simulators, you've got whole lot of experienced people in the organization. And take the recent example of Qantas. They deferred the delivery of Dreamliner aircraft for 2 years. What did Air India do? Continue to take delivery, continue to expand and launch new flights.
Right.
You need to contract. Japan Airlines did the same thing. One simple statement of the Qantas chairman appealed to me. He said, what did we do? We were faster with decisions, productive with assets, and costs were under control.
Right. So you're saying the airline has to contract first before anything else happens. Do you agree?
Yeah, agree. And
that means the number of flights have to come down. Maybe, I don't know, staff, whether it can be shared. Assets have to be shared.
Basically, flying to destinations which give you money or help you recover money.
But even as we speak, Air India is expanding. Washington.
Now that is a tragedy.
Yeah.
Now the question, it shows lack of understanding between the various players. Now you do not expand because in the first year you don't make money. You are building the market from that area. Now why are you doing it at such a time when there is a question mark on your future?
Right. Okay. So Captain Manik, how expand contract? What's the way forward?
Expand contract. At the moment, we are fighting with the situations where we need to survive. Okay.
Right.
So I don't see any more initiative to be taken for expansion. But one thing I would like to tell you, especially the standards of Air India compared to private airlines. Earlier, Government of India used to issue notices and advisories that your pilots should be trained. Like for example, Delhi in winter, because of fog, we don't have category 3 certified pilots.
Cat 3, yeah.
So Cat 3 pilots are not there. So we, in those time, Air India has taken that initiative and trained their pilots. We have the best engineers, we have the best pilots. But then why? That's a question. So we need to work on it and do the best.
Right. So you're saying as we move forward, recognize that there are talent, assets and skills within this system, and be respectful of that as we go along. But move ahead we must.
Move ahead we must.
Yeah.
As I said, take the positives
Yeah.
and go on them, monetize them, Air India's real estate, for example, reduce the debt. Now, you know, the people who have been advising Air India has not been their own people. It's been advices coming from outside, being a government company. They said 5,000 crore of real estate assets must be monetized at the rate of 500 crores per year spread over 10 years. Question is why? Somebody should be questioning this. Why not 5,000 crores in one go and reduce the debt to that extent?
Okay, so maybe as the ownership changes, maybe those things will happen. Last word, Captain Manik, way forward for Air India, disinvestment or privatize? They're two different things.
Privatization.
Okay, full privatization. What about you?
Disinvestment to begin with, so that it gets acceptability, and then go for privatization. Because if you try and go for privatization straight away, there will be much opposition to it. And as we have seen in the past, the government at some stage develops cold feet and gives up the proposal. And that has been the unfortunate part of Air India's
so disinvestment first and then privatize, say, our guests. But privatize is what we should eventually, but in the short term, hopefully aim for. Thank you both for joining me. We've run out of time. That's all we have time for on Policy Watch this week. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.